Victoria Sterling adjusted the delicate strap of her lavender dress for the third time. Standing before the mirror in the ladies' lounge of the Grand Meridian Hotel, the dress was beautiful. A vintage find from her favorite thrift shop, but surrounded by designer gowns and sparkling jewelry, she felt like a wildflower among perfectly cultivated roses. "You look stunning," Luna Chen whispered, appearing beside her with a warm smile. "Stop worrying about fitting in. You belong here just as much as anyone else." Victoria managed a grateful smile at her best friend's encouragement, but the knot in her stomach remained. She was here as Emma Wellington's guest, invited because they had bonded over flower arrangements during wedding planning sessions. Was kind and genuine. But her world was vastly different from Victoria's small apartment above the flower shop. Entering a golden paradise, the ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors, while hundreds of white roses and peonies created an ethereal garden atmosphere. Victoria had provided some of the floral arrangements, and seeing them displayed so magnificently filled her with quiet pride. Guests glided across the polished floor in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Champagne flutes caught the light like liquid diamonds, and soft classical music floated through the air. Everything gleamed with wealth and sophistication that made Victoria's modest upbringing feel worlds away. The ushers guided her to table 12. Tucked away in a distant corner, behind a decorative pillar, her heart sank slightly as she realized this was clearly where they placed the other guests, the ones who didn't quite fit into the main social circles. Sharing her table were a handful of quiet strangers who seemed equally out of place. The mysterious arrival Victoria was picking at her untouched salad when a ripple of whispers swept through the ballroom. Conversations paused mid-sentence, heads turned, and even the waiters slowed their movements. She looked up to see what had captured everyone's attention. A man stood in the doorway, tall and commanding in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His dark hair was styled with casual precision, and there was something magnetic about his presence that drew every eye in the room. He moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being noticed, yet there was a hint of weariness in his striking blue eyes. "Sebastian Cross," whispered the elderly woman beside Victoria with obvious admiration. "The tech billionaire. He and the groom built their empire together." Victoria watched as Sebastian made his way through the crowd, accepting greetings and handshakes with practiced charm. Had heard his name before, who hadn't? Cross Technologies was revolutionizing artificial intelligence, and his face had graced countless magazine covers. But seeing him in person was different. He seemed larger than life, yet somehow approachable. An unexpected choice to Victoria's complete amazement. Sebastian's path led directly toward her forgotten corner table. She glanced around, certain he must be heading somewhere else, but his blue eyes were fixed on her with unmistakable intent. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm and slightly rough around the edges. "Is this seat taken?" Victoria's mouth went dry. "No, it's not," she managed to say. Gesturing to the empty chair beside her, Sebastian sat down gracefully. And immediately the atmosphere at their neglected table transformed. Suddenly, they were no longer invisible. Other guests craned there, next to see what had drawn the famous billionaire to the corner of the room. "I'm Sebastian," he said simply, extending his hand. "Victoria," she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice as their hands touched. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that made her heart skip. Beautiful name for a beautiful woman. "I hope you don't mind the company." The view from up front was getting a bit predictable. Breaking the ice, Victoria found herself relaxing despite the surreal situation. Sebastian wasn't what she had expected. From a billionaire? He was funny, asking about her life with genuine curiosity rather than polite small talk. When she mentioned owning a flower shop, his face lit up with interest. "Flowers have always fascinated me," he admitted. "Something honest about them. They can't pretend to be anything other than what they are. Unlike people," Victoria said without thinking, then blushed at her boldness. Sebastian laughed, a rich sound that made her stomach flutter. "Exactly like people, if they're brave enough to be authentic." Their conversation flowed naturally, covering everything from favorite books to travel dreams. Victoria learned that despite his wealth, Sebastian had grown up with a single mother, who worked 2 jobs to support them. His success hadn't erased his appreciation for genuine connections. "Can I ask you something?" Sebastian said as the main course was served. "What made you choose flowers?" Victoria smiled, her eyes growing distant with memory. "My grandmother had a garden behind her tiny house. Every summer, I would help her tend to it. She taught me that flowers don't bloom to impress anyone. They bloom because it's their nature to be beautiful. I wanted to surround myself with that kind of honest beauty." Sebastian studied her face intently. That's the most refreshing thing I've heard in years. The first dance, when the band began playing the couple's first dance song, Sebastian stood and offered his hand. "Would you honor me with a dance?" Victoria's heart raced. "I should warn you, I'm not exactly ballroom trained. Neither am I," he confessed with a grin. "We'll figure it out together." On the dance floor, surrounded by curious stares and whispered speculation, Victoria felt like she was floating. Sebastian held her with gentle confidence, guiding her through simple steps. That felt surprisingly natural. His hand was warm against her back, and she caught the subtle scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "That's because you're a good leader," she replied, looking up into his eyes. The music seemed to wrap around them, creating a private bubble in the crowded ballroom. Victoria forgot about the designer gowns and judgmental glances. In Sebastian's arms, she felt beautiful, valued. Seen in a way she had never experienced before, whispers and speculation as they swayed to the music. Victoria became aware of the attention they were attracting. She caught glimpses of raised eyebrows, hastily whispered conversations behind champagne glasses, and cell phones discreetly capturing photos. "They're all staring," she whispered, suddenly self-conscious. Sebastian's grip tightened slightly, protective and reassuring. "Let them stare. They're just jealous. They're not dancing with the most captivating woman in the room." Victoria felt a warm blush spread across her cheeks. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said softly. "I know you have kind eyes and an honest smile. I know you light up when you talk about something you love. I know you make me want to forget about everything else happening in this room." The song ended too soon, but Sebastian didn't immediately let her go. They stood there for a moment, lost in each other's eyes, while the rest of the world seemed to fade away, an invitation to more. Back at their table, the energy between them had shifted into something deeper and more electric. Sebastian seemed completely absorbed in getting to know her, asking thoughtful questions and listening to her answers with focused attention that made Victoria feel like she was the only person in the room. "I have a confession," Sebastian said. As dessert was served, "I didn't come late by accident tonight. I almost didn't come at all." "Why?" Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Events like this, he gestured around the opulent ballroom. They're usually more about performance than celebration. Everyone wants something, or they're trying to impress someone, or they're making deals disguised as small talk. It gets exhausting. Victoria nodded, understanding, "But you came anyway." For James and Emma, they're good friends, and their happiness is genuine. He paused, his eyes finding hers again. "And now I'm incredibly grateful I did." The way he looked at her made Victoria's breath catch. There was something intense and honest in his gaze that made her feel both vulnerable and excited. "Would you like to get some air?" Sebastian asked as the reception moved into full swing around them. Victoria nodded, and he led her out onto a moonlit terrace overlooking the hotel's gardens. The night air was cool and sweet with the scent of jasmine, and the sounds of the party faded to a gentle murmur behind them. "This is better," Sebastian said, leaning against the stone railing beside her. "Much better," Victoria agreed, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Sebastian turned to face her fully. "Victoria, I know this might sound crazy since we just met, but I feel like I've been waiting for this conversation my entire life." Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. "I feel it too," she whispered, as the moon cast silver light across the garden below. Sebastian reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. The gesture was tender and electric, filled with promise. "And possibility, can I see you again?" he asked softly. "Yes," Victoria breathed. Knowing that this moment was changing the course of her life forever, The wedding reception continued to sparkle behind them, but Victoria and Sebastian had found something infinitely more precious than all the gold and crystal surrounding them. They had found each other, in the beginning of a love story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about their worlds. Victoria woke up in her small apartment above the flower shop, sunlight streaming through her modest curtains. For a moment, she wondered if the previous night had been an elaborate dream. Then she saw the elegant business card on her nightstand, with Sebastian's personal number written in his confident handwriting, and her heart fluttered with the memory of their connection. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Good morning, beautiful. Thank you for making last night unforgettable. Can I take you to lunch today?" Sebastian Victoria stared at the message, reading it 3 times before responding. The contrast between her tiny apartment with its secondhand furniture and peeling paint and Sebastian's world of luxury seemed impossibly vast in the morning light. A different kind of data instead of an expensive restaurant, Sebastian surprised her by arriving in jeans and a casual sweater, carrying a picnic basket, and wearing a boyish grin that made her heart skip. "I thought we could go somewhere less formal," he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Unless you prefer caviar and crystal glasses." Victoria laughed, the tension in her shoulders melting away. "I prefer honest conversation and good company." Drove to a quiet park outside the city, where Sebastian spread a blanket under an old oak tree. The picnic was simple but thoughtful. Fresh sandwiches, seasonal fruit, and homemade cookies that he admitted sheepishly were actually made by his housekeeper. "Tell me about your world," Victoria said as they sat cross-legged on the blanket. Watching clouds drift overhead, Sebastian was quiet for a moment, his expression growing thoughtful. "It's complicated. Success brings opportunities, but it also brings expectations and responsibilities that never end. Everyone wants something from you, and after a while, you start to wonder if anyone sees the real you anymore." Victoria studied his profile, seeing vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. "What do you miss most about your life before all?" "This success? Privacy," he said immediately. "The ability to go somewhere without being recognized or photographed. Simple moments like this one, where I can just be myself without wondering what it might cost me later." Meeting the real Sebastian over. The following weeks, Victoria discovered layers to Sebastian that the media never captured. He was brilliant and driven, but also surprisingly down-to-earth. He remembered details about her stories, asked thoughtful questions about her flower arrangements, and seemed genuinely fascinated by her simple life. Sebastian took her to his private office one evening after hours, showing her the view from the top floor of Cross Technologies Tower. The city spread out below them like a constellation of lights, beautiful and intimidating. "This is where I spend most of my time," he said, standing behind his massive desk that could have doubled as a dining table, making decisions that affect thousands of employees and millions of customers. Victoria walked to the floor-2 ceiling, windows pressing her palm against the cool glass. "It's beautiful, but doesn't it feel lonely up here?" Sebastian joined her at the window, their reflections overlapping in the glass. It did, until recently. The weight of his words hung between them, and Victoria felt the intensity of his gaze even in their reflection. When she turned to face him, he was closer than expected, his blue eyes dark with emotion. "Victoria," he said softly, "I need you to know that whatever this is between us, it's not casual for me. I don't do casual." Before she could respond, he cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her. It was soft and tender at first, then deeper as she melted into his embrace. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "I don't do casual either," she whispered against his lips. The first crack in paradise there. Happiness was interrupted 3 weeks later when photos of them together appeared in a gossip magazine with the headline, "Billionaire's Mystery Woman. Who is Sebastian Cross's New Love?" Victoria stared at the images in horror, pictures of them at coffee shops, walking hand in hand through the park, laughing together outside her flower shop. The article speculated about her background, her motives, and her obvious attempts to climb the social ladder. "I'm so sorry," Sebastian said when he arrived at her shop that afternoon, his face grim. "I should have warned you this might happen." Victoria felt exposed and vulnerable, like her private moments had been stolen and put on display for judgment. They make me sound like some kind of gold digger. Sebastian pulled her into his arms, his embrace fierce and protective. Anyone who knows you would see how ridiculous that is. No, you were the most genuine person I've ever met. But the damage was done. Victoria noticed the stares when she went to the grocery store, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Her peaceful anonymity was gone, replaced by unwanted scrutiny. Family pressure mounts. The situation worsened when Sebastian's mother, Catherine Cross, arrived unannounced at Victoria's flower shop. Catherine was elegant and intimidating in the way that only old money could create, with perfectly styled silver hair and a gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "Miss Sterling," Catherine said without preamble, "we need to talk." Victoria felt small and underdressed in her simple work clothes, dirt under her fingernails from arranging roses. "Mrs. Cross, what can I do for you?" "Can end this ridiculous affair with my son," Catherine said coldly. "Sebastian is destined for great things, and he needs a partner who can enhance his position, not diminish it." Victoria's cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. "I love your son for who he is, not what he has." Catherine's laugh was sharp and cruel. "My dear girl, love is a luxury that people in Sebastian's position cannot afford. He needs someone who understands his world, someone who can navigate society, functions, and business dinners without embarrassing him." "I would never embarrass Sebastian," Victoria said quietly. But her confidence was shaken. Catherine placed a check on the counter, the amount written making Victoria's eyes widen. "This should be enough to start fresh somewhere else." "Sebastian, we'll recover from this infatuation, but only if you're not here to encourage it." Victoria stared at the check, her hands trembling with emotion. "I'm not for sale, Mrs. Cross." Catherine's expression hardened. "Everything has a price, dear. The question is whether you care enough about Sebastian's future to accept it." After Catherine left, Victoria sat alone among her flowers, feeling more confused and hurt than ever. Before a weekend away, sensing Victoria's distress, Sebastian planned a surprise weekend getaway to his lake house in the mountains. The house was rustic and charming, built from local stone and timber, with wide windows overlooking pristine water surrounded by pine forests. "This is where I come to remember who I am," Sebastian said as they stood on the deck, breathing in the crisp mountain air. No phones, no meetings, no expectations, just peace. For 2 days, they existed in their own private world. They cooked simple meals together, took long walks through the forest, and spent hours talking by the fireplace. Victoria felt the walls around her heart lowering as she saw Sebastian completely relaxed and unguarded. On their last evening, as they sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Sebastian took her hands. In his, "I love you, Victoria," he said simply. "I know it's complicated, and I know my world can be overwhelming, but I love you exactly as you are." Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes. "I love you too, Sebastian, but I'm scared that loving each other won't be enough." Sebastian pulled her closer, his voice fierce with determination. "It has to be enough, because I'm not giving up on us, no matter what anyone else says." As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Victoria allowed herself to believe that love really could conquer all the obstacles in their path. Returning to the city, the paparazzi had multiplied. Camping outside Victoria's flower shop and following Sebastian's every move, business associates began expressing concerns about his distraction. And society columnists had a field day analyzing every aspect of Victoria's background. The breaking point came at the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala, an event Sebastian had supported for years. Victoria wore her best dress, a simple black number that Luna had helped her choose, but she felt underdressed among the designer gowns and glittering jewelry. "You look beautiful," Sebastian whispered as they entered the ballroom, his hand warm and reassuring on her back. But Victoria could feel the stares, hear the whispered comments as they passed. She held her head high, determined not to let the scrutiny break her spirit. The public humiliation the evening took a devastating turn when Theodore Blackwood, Sebastian's longtime business rival, approached their table with a predatory smile. "Sebastian." "Old friend," Theodore said smoothly, "I see you're still slumming it with the help." Sebastian's jaw clenched dangerously. "Oh, Watch your mouth, Theodore. Theodore ignored the warning, turning his cold gaze to Victoria. Tell me, my dear, how much? Is he paying you for this performance? Because I have to say, you're quite convincing as the innocent flower girl. The words hit Victoria like physical blows, and she felt the blood drain from her face. Around them, conversations had stopped as people turned to watch the confrontation. That's enough, Sebastian said. Standing so quickly, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. But Theodore wasn't finished. Really, Sebastian? I thought you had better taste. When you're ready for a real woman, instead of this little project, call me. I know several suitable candidates who could actually be assets to your empire. Victoria stood on shaking legs, her dignity in tatters. Excuse me, she said quietly, and walked quickly toward the exit, leaving behind a room full of shocked whispers and ass. Sebastian's furious voice telling Theodore exactly what he thought of him. The breaking point, Sebastian found Victoria in the hotel's garden, sitting on a bench with tears streaming down her face. The sight of her pain made his chest ache with fury and helplessness. Victoria, please don't let that bastard get to you, he said, sitting beside her and pulling her into his arms. He's jealous and cruel, and everything he said was garbage. Victoria pulled back to look at him, her eyes red but determined. Maybe he's right, Sebastian. Maybe I am just a project to you, a way to feel normal for a while before you go back to your real life. How can you say that? Sebastian asked, his voice breaking slightly. You know that's not true. Victoria stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. Do I, because your mother offered me money to disappear? Your business associates think I'm a liability, and everyone at that gala looked at me like I was some kind of fraud. Sebastian felt his world tilting dangerously. I don't care what they think. I only care about you. But I have to care, Victoria said, her voice growing stronger. Because this is my life too, and I won't spend it feeling like I have to apologize for existing in your world. The ultimatum the next morning, Sebastian arrived at his office to find his entire board of directors waiting in the conference room. Their faces were grim, and he knew immediately that this confrontation had been building for weeks. Gentlemen, he said, taking his seat at the head of the massive table. I assume this is about my personal life. Your personal life is affecting the company, said Richard Hartwell, the board chairman. Our stock price has dropped 3 points since these rumors started. Several major clients have expressed concerns about your judgment. Sebastian's expression remained perfectly controlled, but his eyes turned to ice. My judgment built this company from nothing into a billion-dollar empire? I won't be lectured about it now. Sebastian, said another board member, we're not asking you to be alone forever. We're simply suggesting that you choose a partner who enhances rather than threatens your position. The room fell silent as Sebastian stood slowly, his presence filling the space with barely contained power. Gentlemen, let me be very clear. Victoria Sterling is the woman I love, and I intend to marry her. If that threatens your delicate sensibilities or your profit margins, you're welcome to find other employment. The board members exchanged shocked glances. Richard cleared his throat nervously. Sebastian, surely you're not serious about marriage. You barely know this woman. Sebastian's smile was sharp and dangerous. I know everything I need to know. She's honest, kind, brave, and she loves me for who I am, not what I can buy her. That's more than any of you can say about your marriages. Victoria's moment of truth, meanwhile, Victoria was working in her shop when Luna burst through the door with a tablet in her hands. Her face flushed with excitement. Victoria, you need to see this, Luna said, pulling up a news article. Sebastian just quit his own company. Victoria stared at the headline in shock. Billionaire CEO resigns after board demands he end romance. The article detailed Sebastian's dramatic exit from Cross Technologies after refusing to give up his relationship with Victoria. He had walked away from billions of dollars rather than compromise their love. Victoria felt her knees go weak. He quit for me? He chose you over everything, Luna said softly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Victoria looked around her small shop at the simple life she had built with her own hands, and realized that none of it meant anything without Sebastian in it. She had been so focused on not being good enough for his world that she had forgotten the most important truth. They were good enough for each other. The grand gesture that evening. Victoria arrived at Sebastian's penthouse unannounced. answered. The door looking haggard and defeated, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. Victoria, he said, surprise and hope warring in his voice. What are you doing here? Instead of answering, she reached up and cupped his face in her hands, studying the man who had given up everything for her. I read about what you did today. Sebastian's expression grew guarded. I won't apologize for choosing you. I'm not asking you to, Victoria said softly. I'm asking you to let me choose you too. Sebastian's breath caught. What are you saying? Victoria smiled through her tears. I'm saying that I love you, Sebastian Cross. Not your money, not your company, not your status. You. The man who sits on my fire escape, eating takeout Chinese food. The man who learned to arrange flowers just to spend time with me. The man who sees beauty in simple things and isn't afraid to be vulnerable. Sebastian pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I was so afraid. I'd lost you. Never, Victoria whispered against his neck. But we're going to do this differently. We're going to build our own life, our own way, without caring what anyone else thinks. New beginnings 6 months later, Sebastian and Victoria stood in the garden behind her flower shop, surrounded by friends and family as they exchanged vows. Victoria wore her grandmother's simple white dress. Sebastian had never looked more handsome in his casual suit and genuine smile. Emma and James were there, beaming with happiness for their friends. Luna served as maid of honor, and even Catherine Cross attended, having gradually come to respect Victoria's strength and integrity. You taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought, Sebastian said during his vows, his voice steady and sure. You taught me that home isn't a place, it's a person. You are my home, Victoria Sterling, today and always. Victoria's voice was clear and strong as she responded, You taught me that I don't have to make myself smaller to be loved. You see me, all of me, and love me anyway. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Sebastian had started a new company, this time focusing on sustainable technology and fair business practices. Victoria expanded her flower shop into a full wedding planning business, using her eye for simple beauty to create celebrations that were genuine rather than ostentatious. The perfect ending as the sun set on their wedding day. Sebastian and Victoria danced alone in the garden, surrounded by the scent of roses and the soft glow of string lights. The music was simple, the setting modest, but their joy was infinite. Any regrets? Victoria asked, looking up into his blue eyes. Sebastian spun her gently, his smile bright enough to outshine the stars. Only that it took me so long to find you. Victoria laughed, the sound pure and musical in the evening air. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. As they swayed together in their perfect moment, both knew that their love story was just beginning. They had learned that true love doesn't require you to change who you are, it simply asks you to be brave enough to be yourself with another person. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that person will choose to build a whole new world with you. One where love really is enough to conquer all. The wedding guests watched from the shop's windows as the couple danced, their silhouettes creating a perfect picture of love that needed no enhancement, no explanation, and no apology. It was simply beautiful, honest, and true, just like the love that had brought them together at a wedding where she sat alone. Until a billionaire's best friend took her hand and changed everything.